Hi, everybody. Gabriele here, Senior Managing Editor and Security Expert with SafeHome.org. Today, we have the pleasure of talking with Dr. Eli Shapiro. Dr. Eli is a licensed clinical social worker with a doctorate in education, specializing in technology's impact on functioning. He's the creator and director of the Digital Citizenship Project, and he's developed many strategies for maximizing what technology has to offer and avoiding its inherent challenges. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Eli, for talking with me today. So let's just go ahead and jump right into the questions. Can you tell me about your background in the tech and safety space as it pertains to kids?
It's interesting. I didn't start out in the technology space. My background is I'm a clinical social worker and I have a doctorate in education. And as a social worker, I was very focused on social emotional functioning of kids, and particularly bullying and promoting positive peer relations amongst kids. When I was doing my doctorate, I started in about 2007. Cyberbullying just started becoming a thing. So in sort of expanding beyond the traditional bullying that I had been working with for a number of years, I started doing research on cyberbullying. And in an effort to understand what promoted cyberbullying, who cyberbullied, why it was happening, I did a lot of research in human behavior and technology. And so it sort of evolved from that. It was never strategically about technology, but certainly it developed really from understanding the social emotional experiences of kids. And as technology became more ubiquitous and the proliferation of devices became so intense, that's really just where my career path led me, but it was definitely not strategic in that sense.
Right. Yeah, cyberbullying is a big issue. What are some other inherent dangers of an increasingly digital world for our kids?
It's a really broad question. There are so many issues around technology, but I'm not anti-technology. Technology is awesome. It's amazing. It's wonderful. But the issue is, though, that we are absorbing it at such a fast rate, we're not necessarily maximizing it in a way that it is enhancing our functioning. And in many ways, it serves as an intrusion to our functioning. You know, I often get the question isn't it just the natural progression like radio and television and the internet? And the answer is, in some ways, yes, it's the natural progression, but from the time that radio was introduced to the consumer, it took about 38 years for it to reach 50 million users. From the time that television was introduced to consumers, it took about 14 years until it was absorbed by 50 million users. From the time the internet came to market, it took 4 years to reach 50 million users. When TikTok came to market, it took about a week, to reach 50 million users. So when you think about the speed at which we're absorbing technology, it's not a surprise that nearly 90% of people experience what we call phantom vibrations at some point. That's when your body's vibrating, but you don't have your phone with you. It really means that we have been conditioned to such a degree to anticipate the buzz or the notification, and our relationship with technology has become so enmeshed in such a significant way that we are literally experiencing physical symptoms from it. And when you think about what the brain and focus and all those aspects of functioning, how those are impacted, it's significant as well. So it's definitely not that technology is bad. Technology is amazing, but we do need to understand how it impacts our functioning so we can make better, more responsible decisions around technology. So the areas that I identify as key areas around technology are its impact on social functioning, psychological functioning, behavioral functioning, and then the overall day-to-day. And so those are like the key areas that I speak a lot about, and I work with kids and with families about, but it's those core areas are certainly impacted. And the idea is that if we had a better understanding of how it was impacting us, we could make better responsible decisions so that technology serves as an enhancement for our lives rather than an intrusion.
What are some worst case scenarios if poor digital habits go unchecked for our kids?
So our concern tends to be around overall functioning and flourishing for kids. So When it comes to not addressing the challenges of technology, we see negative impact on their social functioning, their psychological functioning, their behavioral functioning, and even their day-to-day functioning. So, worst case scenario, you end up being, 35, living in your parents' basement playing Fortnite all day, and never really evolving or thriving in a normative way in our society. So that's really worst case scenario. But most kids don't get there, but we really do want to focus on that overall social, psychological, and behavioral impact of technology.
Great. And how can parents instill digital responsibility in their children, especially with smartphones and social media and that type of thing?
Interesting. We've surveyed parents, we've surveyed kids across the country, and about 90% of parents say they've had conversations with their kids about using technology responsibly and that there are set rules in their house around technology. But only about 40% of kids say that there are set rules that their parents speak with them. So number one, we have to have conversations with our kids, and it has to be conversations that our kids realize that we're having these conversations. Sometimes the adults think we've had a conversation with our kids, but it hasn't really, maybe it was one-sided one way. It really needs to be a give and take conversation. So that's step one. And step two is parental modeling. The role that parents play in modeling appropriate behavior is really critical. And in fact, it's the number one influence. And we've surveyed kids, what they think is appropriate and responsible when it comes to technology. Their parents consistently are the number one influence.
Great. And in what ways can or should screen time actually enhance a child's life?
It's interesting. The term screen time is something that I've been pushing back on as of late, because I don't think that all screen time is created equal. So just for example, the difference between television and video games, assuming that they're non-violent video games, but the difference between television and video games is a lot of research that kids that game actually excel in certain areas, including problem solving, collaborative problem solving, multitasking, drowning out external noise, visual motor integrations, a whole host of benefits that you have from gaming that you don't have from television. And so if you want to say qualitatively what's better, I would say video games, assuming they're non-violent, are better than television. But there's always going to be a tipping point of how much is too much. And that really differs from child to child. But if you go up the scale of screen time, starting with consumption, which is that Netflix binging, to complementary, which is the interactive type of gameplay, and you get all the way up to creative. So creative can be coding or software development or graphic design or video editing. That's all screen time, but clearly it's not the same thing as Netflix binging. So we really have to have a more sophisticated understanding of what being in front of a screen is. Before I can answer the question of what the benefits are, there's plenty of benefits, especially from a communication standpoint, the creativity standpoint, the opportunity for productivity, information, connectivity. All these things are amazing and wonderful opportunities, but it has to be checked and it has to be done in a strategic way, particularly for kids that don't have the ability to self-regulate. The role of parents is critical in helping them regulate the amount of time that they're utilizing screens.
Okay, great. And can you talk a little bit about technology in the classroom and its inherent benefits and risks?
So it's interesting. I do a lot of professional development for teachers across the country. And particularly when it comes to the use of technology in the classroom, some schools have gone with this, everything's going to be on the iPad or on the Google Chromebook. And it's really important when designing a lesson as a teacher, first figuring out what you want to accomplish as part of your lesson, what the curricular goals are, and then determine if technology is the best way to get there. In many cases, it is the best way to get there. In many cases, it's not necessarily the best way to get there. Particularly today from the education piece, it used to be that the educators would give over information to students. And that has really shifted because kids have the information already. It's readily accessible, ready available to them. Our goal in the field of education, and we're seeing this shift, really needs to be developing critical thinking skills And so the more we can move lessons and curriculum and classroom activities towards the development of critical thinking skills, the better off and more competent our students will be coming out of a traditional schooling model.
Got it. And what are some concrete strategies and tactics parents can take starting today to ensure their kids' safety online?
So I think the first thing that parents can do is really having conversations with their kids about the role that technology plays in their lives, setting rules and guidelines, the expectations within the home around technology use. So having rules is probably the most important thing that a parent can do. And rules don't have to be, draconian in nature. They can be, with the first half hour home, no technology, or around the dinner table, going dark for dinner, just creating that environment. I love going dark for dinner because it not only shows that there's a time for technology and a time not for technology, but it also gives parents the opportunity to have more meaningful conversations with their kids. So that's a great tool that parents can bring in right away. We know that device usage before bedtime interferes with quality of sleep. We also know that the #1 predictor of kids being successful on any given day in school, both academically and socially, directly relates to the quality of sleep they had the night before. So one of the things that parents can do right away is really cut out technology a half hour before bedtime. Don't let your kids sleep with devices within reach. I mean, these are just basic strategies that you can utilize. And the idea really is, if I had to summarize it, just be thoughtful and deliberative with what you do with technology with your kids. I think if you just take that minute or two to think about, is this good for my child? Is this healthy, both in the near term and in the long term? I think parents intuitively know what they should and shouldn't be doing in that space.
Okay. And in just one sentence, what would you say is a win for parents?
I think a win for parents is being able to have conversations with your kids around technology, creating a safe space where they can talk to you about their experiences with technology. I think kids have been conditioned that the adults in the room are there to take away their technology and are telling them screen time is bad. I think a win for parents is if you create an environment and a dynamic between yourself and your child where the conversation around technology can be a comfortable one and not a guarded one. I think that's a tremendous win for parents. And I don't think it only applies within the technology space. I think as a parent, that's our goal across the board, whether we're talking about healthy decision-making or substance abuse or technology. It's the kind of thing that we want to be able to create that environment within our homes that our kids feel comfortable talking to us about these developmental issues that they face.
Okay, great. And do you want to talk a little bit about the Digital Citizenship Project and your role there?
So the Digital Citizenship Project was a program I created in 2014 to address the growing need of educating parents and kids around the issues around technology. We generally take a three-pronged approach, which includes parent education, school faculty education, and student education through our one-of-a-kind curriculum. The curriculum focuses not on the do's and don'ts of technology, but really the underlying relationship that kids have with technology. So we teach kids about impulsivity and disinhibition and compulsivity. And we find that when they have the language to understand something that they've been experiencing, all we're doing is providing them with language for it. They are much better able to manage their behaviors with technology. And by creating a common language between school, home, and kids, the effectiveness of the programming is that much greater. And we've seen great results in school communities that have incorporated the Digital Citizenship Project model in creating a culture of healthy and responsible technology use.
Okay, thank you so much again, Dr. Eli, for taking the time to talk with me today. That's all of our time for today. But again, thank you for imparting your wisdom on our viewers.
Thank you. It's been great to be here.